All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into a special episode of Inside the Hoosier Mind, where we go big, and that's big with B1G, because I have my fellow host of the other show that I'm lucky enough to be a part of, Big Talk, spelled B1G, with my fellow host Sam Sprunger, and his first time ever being on Inside the Hoosier Mind. Appreciate you coming on, good sir. Welcome.
Well, and it's the crazy thing is I'm an original Hoosier, even though I live in Ohio now. I am a Hoosier. So how in the world has it taken this long?
I know it's well, I think it's honestly just scheduling conflict because honestly, most of the
Yeah,
time
that's
during the
exactly
regular
what
season, we're both busy. And if we do a show together, it's either on Thursday nights like tonight, or we do it on Friday mornings. We haven't been able to do that here a lot lately.
that's right.
So,
That's right. That's right.
but we're here now, and obviously, we're going to stick with the college theme because that's what we love to talk about. We bring it with
Yeah.
a college sports with a Midwest perspective. I'm going to steal Big Talk's, quote there a little bit. It's not going to be permanent, just temporary for this show.
For tonight.
For tonight, at least, for tonight. But since I'm not able to be on Big Talk as frequently as I would like to be and whatnot, I wanted to bring Sam on because of some of the latest college football news that we have breaking out with not only a college football playoff format, but Sam, we have NCAA coming back to video games this year. And they
Yeah,
just released the
Dalton.
trailers.
Dalton and I have talked about that. We think for like the first 2 or 3 weeks after we come back or after it comes out, we're just gonna just play for an hour.
Yep. Yeah,
one on
literally.
one play for an hour. There we
It's
go,
just
guys. This is what happened because we've been so deprived of it for so long that and rightfully so. It shouldn't have been that thing where they were taking advantage. I'm a firm believer that the schools and the NCAA make a ton of money on those kids.
yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of them, at the very most, they're probably 18 years old when they first step into the realm of college. And these universities are making millions upon millions on these guys. They
Mhm.
deserve some sort of pay. And so the fact that they're only getting $600 and a copy of the game, so what? It's better than just nothing,
To say it's
you know?
better than nothing. And I think honestly, because I kind of wonder what they're if they're waiting to see how successful the game goes. Obviously, there's going to be that big initial push of everybody buying it because everybody wants to play it. It's been 10 years. But then, like you said, what does it look like 2 weeks to a month down the road? Because supposedly it's not supposed to be a copy and paste of Madden like we typically get every single year. It's
Right.
something they've spent the last 2 years putting time and effort into making sure they get all the schools right, the details, the mascot, the fight songs, all of that. So theoretically, it should be better. They even said it's not supposed to be like Madden. So I do kind of wonder if maybe there's not room later on down the line for them to negotiate, hey, we're going to actually give these guys more money for being in the game.
I'm halfway wondering if that almost is detrimental to the franchise of NCAA football, and because of the fact that it was so much, it was Madden, but just in the college form, and
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why, if it wouldn't have had the cult backing, like in the dark interwebs,
Mm-hmm.
of people latching on Dalton, our co-host Dalton, he still to this day plays college football or
Mm-hmm.
CFP, whatever, NCAA
Mm-hmm.
2013.
Yeah.
He
I say
just re-ups the rosters every year.
I have college football revamped on my computer, so I play
Yeah,
NCAA 14 almost all the time because these guys literally went in, they put in the most recent like ESPN
yeah,
scoreboard, they updated some of the not really as much as the graphics, but like the school logos and stuff like that, made it look
right.
like what it comes on ESPN. I play that all the time because it's more fun to be able to play and to be able to like build your school into a dynasty. You can customize the conferences and whatnot, which I've made some crazy conferences, but why not? Put Notre
What
Dame to Big
like
Ten
what
finally.
like what like USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon joining the Big Ten, right?
Pretty
That's the
much, yeah.
crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it sucks because you can only do, I think, I remember right, I think you can only do like 18 teams or like 16 teams
Mhm.
in there. So it's like, okay, well, one of you guys is going to get left out. So I just make it like a rotating thing. I
I, uh,
here
I
too.
used to always make a university, make a school, and start
Oh
a
yeah,
school from scratch.
yeah.
I like
I
doing that.
I follow a few guys that do that on TikTok. One guy he makes, I think it's Grand Rapids University up in Michigan. That
Okay, yeah.
it's kind of cool. But one of the things that's actually going to lead us into our first topic of the night is going to be that they are going to implement the new college football playoff format into this, and there's going to be some customization that comes with that as well. And for anybody that doesn't know, the new college football playoff format that come out is the 5+7. So you're going to have the 5 highest ranked conference champions. The top 4 will get a first round bye. The 5th is not guaranteed anything other than a for sure playoff spot. And then the next 7 best teams are also going to be included in. So, Sam, what's your thoughts on this? Because there's even talks that apparently the Big Ten and SEC, obviously the big heavy hitters for much of college sports now, is pushing that they want an automatic bid for 4 teams from the Big Ten and 4 teams from the SEC to automatically be in. But what's your thoughts
How about
on
you prove it? That's
prove
my
it
biggest
first?
thing. Both of those conferences don't, just because they've got the most teams doesn't mean that they're automatically going to, deservedly get the most playoff spots. How about you keep it 5+7,
Mhm.
and you know what? You've got the next 6 teams are SEC and Big Ten teams. That
Mhm.
gives you 4 each. You're making way. But yeah, come on, let's just earn it. Earn it, for crying out loud. I love the Big Ten. I absolutely love the Big Ten. But at no point do I this year I don't think they would have gotten away with 4 teams.
No, not this year. I don't even honestly think the SEC would have either.
Okay, I take that back. If you throw in the 4 teams that it will be in the Big Ten next year, maybe they have 14s. Maybe, because I would say that Ohio State and Oregon, maybe with the 12 they both make it, but I'm thinking maybe one of those misses out.
I think I think if there was anybody that would, and I know we've talked about this just because of
I guess Penn
teams
State
having,
maybe misses out.
I think Penn State would be out. I think out of Oregon and Ohio State, I think Ohio State would have been out. And I know we've talked about it with teams being penalized for not playing an extra game, win or lose with the conference championship. Oregon did play for the Pac-12 championship, and they only lost by a field goal, so they
But
were
they did
close
twice, even though it was twice to the same team.
to the same team that ended up in the national title. So I mean that, and again they lost the first time by 3 points. So they've
Right.
kept it close every time. So I think if they did that, I would probably give the nod more to Oregon than I would to Ohio State.
So with that said, I don't know. I don't think they should be guaranteed 4. I mean, that's 8 of the 12 going to 2 conferences, and no, absolutely not. You're not, unless you're saying 4 total of between the 2.
No, I think by the looks of what I read, they wanted 4 each.
Yeah, no, see, that's just because you've got the most teams doesn't mean you deservedly have to have the most playoff teams. I mean, what happens if, the Big 12 pulls off 2 teams that deserve to be there, and you've got the Mountain West that puts Boise State in there or something. Like you can have those outliers that it
Mhm.
just there's going to be years that you're not going to have 4 of the best 12 teams in your conference. You're just not.
Yeah, and like we've kind of talked about before with the top 25 poll, because you and I have not really been a big fan of that, because really
Mm-mm.
once you got out of to me once you kind of got out of the top 10, and you could even make an argument for like the top 7, you're not really looking at a team that you're like, oh man, they need to face a real opponent and they can go on a run and they could potentially win a national title. Usually those teams, they already have maybe 1 to 2 losses, and you're like, you're good. I don't know if you're going to be able to beat this team, but you're good. I think with the top 12 teams, that's probably going to be about as top as you get, as far as your true like competition, truly good teams that
Yeah.
okay, yes, we can make an argument that all of these teams deserve to actually be in the playoffs and compete.
Well, let's put it in comparison with the which we will get to later, the NCAA tournament,
Hmm.
basketball tournament. You know, 16s don't beat ones very often. 15s don't beat twos very often, and so forth and so forth. Now, double digit teams win games, but
Hmm.
they don't go very far a lot of times.
Right.
There's a reason why what was it? A 5 seed is the lowest seed to ever win a national championship. It's because those Cinderellas, while they're great in the first weekend, they don't correlate to wow, we really want them to make a national championship run. It's okay, we want to go back to what we're used to seeing, and
Yeah.
we want to see it happen. And that's what happens many times. Now, occasionally you'll get that George Mason or that
Hmm.
VCU that makes a run to the Final Four. You'll get that in the football, even an
Hmm.
occasional, ooh, the 7 seed makes it to the Final Four, or even the 10 seed makes it to the Final Four, on occasion. You're gonna get that occasionally where a team gets hot and they stun a couple of schools. I just don't see a fact that a 10 seed wins the national championship in football, though.
Yeah, I don't either. And I do agree. I think it's one of those we all enjoy a good Cinderella story. Like, oh yeah, it'd be cool if this team makes it. Perfect example, TCU. They were a Cinderella story. Like it was
Yeah,
cool. They went very far. They beat some good teams. I'm not going to dismiss what they did, but
they
eventually
earned their spot in the national championship game.
they
They
did.
did.
They did. But like we found out, every every Cinderella story eventually meets a giant buzzsaw that brings them back down to
Strikes at
reality.
some point. Yep.
And unfortunately they had to meet Georgia, and Georgia was the buzzsaw that brought
It's
them back
really
down to
good.
earth.
Really good.
Um, I did kind of think of something though that I do wonder, even though I don't think it's going to create as much controversy as I'm probably thinking it might, of considering it's the five conference champions, the fifth being the best of the group five. Are you in the same boat as I am? You're kind of waiting for, let's say, the AAC brings, hypothetically, let's say they bring Army out of the AAC since they're joining the AAC next year. They come out as the best of the AAC, but like you said, with the Mountain West Conference and Boise State, they come out both undefeated. They don't face each other. They have about the same strength of schedule, and then eventually someone may or may not get screwed because yeah, you have a good record, but you're not the best. And honestly, we don't really want Army in the playoffs because we have other teams that are significantly better, played better schedule, played better teams, and we are going to make much more money off of them being in the playoffs than you.
Will you, though?
I
Let's
think.
piggyback off of what I just said. That we hardly ever think that a low seed, a lower half seed, let's say a 7 down to 12, right?
Mhm.
We don't think they'll very often make a run to where, yeah, okay, they could maybe win a game, maybe two, but they're not going to win a national championship, right?
Right.
Let's say Army does come out undefeated, didn't play.
There we
Are
go.
we back?
Yep, we're
Okay,
back.
sorry.
That's okay.
Let's say they fall in, and they're undefeated and they've got a better overall record than a, let's say, um 3-loss Mississippi, Ole Miss.
Mhm.
Are you gonna put in that 3-loss Ole Miss team that's not going to win it either? Or are you going to get that potential Cinderella story to where even if they lose it in the first round, that's might be what Ole Miss was going to do anyways against somebody. At least you've got that potential, and you're rewarding that service, that academy, university, or service academy, with a trip to the CFB. I think you could see that it would be potentially something that you could use that as a springboard to include more teams, maybe even.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like I said, I'm still under kind of the conspiracy, and again, I don't think it's going to be as bad since there are 12 spots. 7 are pretty much available to
Yeah.
everybody else. of,
And
okay,
it should be that way. I really
yeah.
do. It should be
Now,
to the best 7 teams.
now here's where I think it might get clogged though, and again, we might run into some issues as far as people getting left out. So you have the 4 best of the Power 4 conferences that are going to be going in. More than likely, whoever faced them for that respective conference title is probably going to be the next 4 teams that are going to be in. So let's say by
Not
then,
always, but probably, yeah. I mean,
but
yeah, you could conceive that, yeah.
especially now that a lot of the conferences are moving away from divisions, so more than likely you're already going to have the 2 best teams from that conference coming in. So you have about 9 spots already taken then. So really you only have like 3 you kind of have wiggle room in. And then
Did I? Okay.
huh? No,
I
no,
thought I
you're good.
froze up for a second. You stopped for a second, and I was like,
No, 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 you're good. You're good. Um
Well, my question is, let's say Baylor and Houston make it to or they're the top 2, but Houston, struggled and strolls into the Big 12 championship, kind of hobbling, and just kind of the rest of the Big 12 beat the crap out of each other, but Baylor wins it outright.
mhm.
Is that automatic that Houston would be in the playoff though?
I don't think so. Somebody kind of brought up, I think honestly, and this is again, I think more of kind of the power of the Big Ten and SEC. I think it's going to be very rare we see more than one Big 12 or more than one ACC team in the college
Yeah,
football playoffs. I think that's going to be super rare unless maybe it's another instance where we have a really good Florida State team and maybe Clemson kind of starts to make the comeback.
or Miami sneaks in that year or something like that.
Yeah, maybe Miami or potentially UNC maybe sneaks in there strong, maybe. Like I could see something like that, but otherwise,
Well, maybe
I honestly
Virginia Tech.
never. Virginia Tech's not sneaking in there. Absolutely not. But no, I mean, I could kind of see that happening where it's like I think it's going to be lean more towards the Big Ten and SEC again, mainly because of brands, and I think too the quality of ball that you're getting. Because like you said, if the Big 12's beating the crap out of each other and you have Houston going in there against Baylor, Baylor wins it. It's like, yeah, we could put Houston in there for an easy, buy for say our 5th seed or our 6th seed because 6 would play 11. Well, you could do that, but it's not really going to earn us a whole lot of, interesting matchups, interesting peaks if they
Yeah.
decide to do that. Because we've seen the college football playoff committee make what we probably think is some stupid choices.
Honestly though, the CFP, the committee there, they're a little bit more commonsensical than the NCAA has been for years. I mean, it's you're always going to have somebody unhappy. So we could balloon this out to 300 teams, and team 301 would be mad that they didn't make it to the tournament. So I mean, you're going to have 13, 14, and 15 all mad because they got left out of the dance. And it's pretty simple. When you get to that point, do better. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't. I mean, if you're on that bubble, take the question out.
Hmm.
Don't say, "Well, think we did better." No, make it to where you did better, and then you
Yeah.
can't be left out. You leave any doubt out of people's minds, and you're not going to be on the outside looking in when it comes to time for the 12 playoff teams.
Yeah. Like I will say this last year with the 4 teams, I think Colin Cowherd kind of brought it up and put it in probably the best perspective that I had heard. And for a lot of people, I think they maybe never thought of it like this. You had at the time 5 Power 5 conferences, and you only had 4 spots. That
Right?
meant
There was one Power
eventually
Five of the year.
you were going to have a Power 5 conference that was going to be left out no matter how good they were, and that ended up
Every
being the
year.
case this year. Yeah. So it now, like you said, nobody really has an excuse. If you're not one of the 12 best teams, you're
Too bad.
probably not going to be. You don't need to be in there to start with anyway. Like you said, not saying you can't get an upset win, not saying you can't have a Cinderella story, but if you're potentially the 14th, or I even saw they're potentially talking about in, I think it was 2026, expanding to either 14 or 16 teams, you're probably not going to win the national title. It's going to be very, very rare that happens. And if you do, by some means, there is going to be so much controversy. There's going to be so many asterisks of how
Mhm.
did you get there? What happened to the other teams? Did their players get hurt? Did they have a scandal? Did they get screwed by a bad call? Like everything is
Right,
going to
no.
be there for you to have to jump over.
Well, and we found, and it's that way in the in the March Madness tournament that,
Mm-hmm.
through the course of time, and it works that way when the NBA expanded from 5 games in the first round to 7, you saw
Mm-hmm.
less and less upsets in a 7-game series because eventually the better teams are going to win. It
Yep.
just and that's not knocking any of those Cinderella teams that people love and cheer for. FDU beating Purdue last year. Well, they lost the next game because the better teams tend to win, and
Yeah.
upsets happen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, and even Tobin Anderson said last year, we're not better than Purdue.
Yeah.
We play that game 9 more times. They beat
Gotcha.
us all 9 times.
Yeah, I was
Like
say nine
he
out of
wasn't
10 times you lose. Like you
he wasn't
you happen to get that
vigilant
one.
to what they did. It was okay, but the better teams always tend to, it pans out, and the better teams tend to win. Even if there's some upsets where the best teams get beat, the better teams are going to win overall.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of
So,
leads in.
so even if they balloon to 16, and that's where I
Yeah.
was going. Even if they balloon to 16, they're going to end up having to make this kind of a reward system, like those
Yeah.
bottom 2 to 3 of, oh, hey, Army played one heck of a great season this year. Let's give them the 15 seed so they can go get summarily dismissed by a 2 seed that throttles them, or
Right.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen, and that's okay. I mean, that still doesn't detract away from what that playoff berth would mean to a team like Army.
Yeah. And it would also coincide with our idea too of it'd make a lot more of these bowl games matter a lot more
For sure.
because and it would make it a lot more interesting because now guys, okay, no, I don't have to forego this bowl game because now I can actually go compete for a title on top of potentially going into the NFL.
We talked about, kind of doing the whole, turning some of the bowl games into the opening season part, like the opening weekend, the Peach Bowl, opening weekend at the Peach Bowl or whatever, that type
Hmm.
of thing. I know the Peach Bowl is one of the New Year's Six, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But why not take some of those lower rung ones and turn those into a rotation where one year or a couple of years you're a CFP first round game, and
Hmm.
then a few years you're an opening season bowl game. That way you keep it competitive. You get both, every or a bunch of the lesser known bowl games get to be part of the college playoff series,
Hmm.
or the bracket. And then other years they're helping open kickoff, and they're getting Clemson and, Oregon playing in the opening weekend out in Tucson,
Yeah.
the Fiesta Bowl or whatever,
Mhm.
so that the potential is there to make money even in opening weekends, and I don't think they're cashing in. I'm shocked they haven't cashed in on this yet.
I know, because I mean, I would make that same argument, for, and I would even say give the lesser known bowls or maybe bowls that you want to try to elevate to be into playoff status eventually. Like
Yeah.
this coming season, you have LSU versus USC. Why not make that the Duke Mayo Bowl or like the Cheez It Bowl or
The
Pop Tart
new
Bowl or
kickoff class.
exactly, and you can have two big brand teams that have a huge following that
Sure.
everybody is going to watch whether they're a fan or not in a first season game that is going to matter because okay, who's the best of the best when it comes to this.
Right. Well, and you get to measure yourself against some of the teams that will probably be standing there at the CFP then at the end of the season. You
Hmm.
can you can make that your marquee win, or hey, we weren't supposed to play with. I don't know why I always come back to Clemson. We weren't supposed to play with Clemson, but we
Hmm.
ended up losing on a last second field goal to them. That makes us feel pretty good going into the season. We may
Yeah.
see them in the tournament.
Hmm. I say, and I think a lot of it too is conference. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of the word, or kind of like conference. I cannot think of the word. Conference prestige. Like yes, you're facing someone from the Big Ten, but you're not facing like IU from the Big Ten. Like you're facing USC, one of the bigger brands of the Big Ten, and you beat them. And they went and played a gauntlet that is the Big Ten, facing Michigan, Ohio State, etc. So it's like that's a pretty good team to actually have a win against on top of it too. Instead of, like, oh yeah, I beat Northwestern. Congrats, you beat a Big Ten team, but you beat one of the like bottom 5 teams of the Big Ten. Congrats.
Yeah,
but
you got a quad 4 win.
Right, you did great. You beat one of the first 4 teams out every year. Congrats. But
they're out by the beginning of the season.
By like week 3, and they're eliminated.
No, by opening kickoff. They've been mathematically eliminated, kind of like the Cowboys are each year.
Every single year. Every single time. Hey, I renounced my Cowboys fandom. Thank you very much.
Did you? Okay.
I did.
Fair.
The minute they lost to the Packers and Jordan Love, I was like, I can't be a fan of y'all anymore. Absolutely not. Never. But anyway, so we'll kind of move on, keeping in topic with this, but moving on to a slightly variation of it. So with the 5+7 format, it was I actually found out from this, doing a little bit of research on it, that the highest Notre Dame can hope to be in this is the 5th seed, and they will not ever get a first round bye unless they join a conference. So at minimum, they can be the 12 seed, or the highest they can be is the 5 seed. Now, I know we've talked about this a lot on Big Talk. We've seen all the rumors. We've seen the conspiracy theories. We've tried to put the dots together as far as they have the massive deal with NBC, but then the Big Ten gets a big deal with NBC. Maybe it potentially pushes them into joining. Now, I do kind of want your thoughts, because as we've talked about on Big Talk a lot before, the ACC is probably going to be the next conference that falls, especially with how unhappy Florida State was this past college football playoffs being taken out, even though they were an undefeated conference champion. ACC felt disrespected. In all honesty, I kind of agree. I don't think ESPN or the playoff committee sees the ACC as a true viable power conference anymore, with Clemson not up there as they have been the last couple of years. Florida State has been good, but again, they haven't been that powerhouse anymore either. Do you think this will now force Notre Dame to join the Big Ten eventually down the road? Because obviously it's probably not going to happen in the next couple of years, unless, again, something happens with Florida State breaking up the ACC for whatever reason. Where do you think it leaves Notre Dame, though, overall?
Short answer, yes. I think they end up in the Big Ten. And you want to know how quickly I think it happens is the first time Notre Dame goes and should be a top 4 seed and ends up the 5 seed because of it. I think that is the instance they go, yeah, this sucks. We're going to a conference. Because while, we're still the number 5 seed. Well, guess what? You're playing a tougher team when it comes to, you have to play a first round game. Yeah, you're going to play the 12 seed in that first round. But then you're moving on to probably a 4 seed, or because they don't reseed you play right into that 4 seed.
Yep. No matter what.
Well, no matter what, you're ended up playing that team, and you're
going on the road on top of it.
I guess I haven't looked at the bracket of what the bracket would look like, but still, they're on the road. I think that's what it was, is they were on the road for every game. And that was the blast against them, is if they don't join a conference, you're gonna be on the road for 4 games.
Yeah,
being the Final Four and the finals being neutral site bowl games, at the very least. I think they end up joining the Big Ten. They will join the Big Ten. Sorry, I don't know if that was. It's got to be my internet, but so I apologize.
Okay.
They're going to join the Big Ten, and I think with what Notre Dame can do with the needle and moving the needle, they're going to bring the likes of they're going to bring the likes of Clemson. They're going to
Mhm.
bring Florida State with them. They're going to bring maybe even a Stanford or something like that, because we're talking about the ACC. Well, Stanford moved just simply to the ACC because they were a warm body to offer
Mhm.
them, a conference to be in. They don't have an allegiance. So if Notre Dame ends up taking, two other teams out of the ACC and they say, hey, Stanford, do you want to come with us? Yes, please, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or
And I mean,
Cal.
we've talked about it too. I mean, academically, Stanford would fit tremendously well as far as their academic
Right.
standards go. And what's even funnier is, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame likes to keep their rivalry with USC, who's now in the Big Ten. If the ACC collapses, well, when the ACC collapses, Stanford would probably also be the next one to join. So even more of a reason for
Mhm.
Notre Dame to come into it. So
Right.
I agree. I think it happens, and I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, and it's kind of off topic, but much to your point of potentially bringing in Florida State to the Big Ten, we've already talked about if Florida State is successful on suing the ACC for their media rights and whatnot, it's going to cost, I
Yep.
believe the last number I saw was $430 million for them to do that. And for anybody who doesn't know, keep in mind their media rights is already with ESPN and the ACC. So if they sue them, they win. Yes, ESPN gets potentially $430 million, if not less, and depending on what they have to spend in legal fees and whatnot, only for Florida State to say, okay, now we want to join the SEC. Oh, you want to come back to another ESPN owned conference because
Mhm.
you want more money. Um, I think then that would just leave Florida State to be, the only other option they really have as far as a major brand to earn a lot of money is the Big Ten. It would help the Big Ten out because geographically, then they would have a footprint in the South in Florida to earn a lot of recruits. Now, one thing I did just think of, I want your thought on.
Okay.
What do you think would happen if instead of trying to break their media rights deal with the ACC, if Florida State tries to present to the SEC, look, we don't necessarily want to break our media rights deal with you guys because you guys own it. It's going to cost us a lot of money. Can we potentially, do a buyout to move over to the SEC? You guys still keep our media rights anyway,
Mhm.
and we get more money. Because I feel like that would almost be the path of least resistance that they don't have as much to have to fight with if they do it that way.
Well, it definitely give them more options
Yeah.
because right now they have zero option. They have to stay with ESPN. Well, if they decide they're going to sue to get out of their media rights deal, you're right. The ESPN's not going to be like, "Oh, hey, Florida State,
Welcome back. It's like you
welcome
never
back."
left.
Yeah. No, they're not going to be very happy about that. And would they take them? Sure, probably, but it's still, they're not going to do it in a happy way. You know what I mean? They're going to be pretty upset with that. So, um, I think that unless they can finagle it and like you said, sweet talk the ESPN higher ups at ESPN about making that trade. Short of
Mhm.
that, they don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
they're marooning themselves to an island of one conference.
I mean, I guess well, no, because I was thinking, well, maybe they could potentially negotiate with the Big 12, but the Big 12 even has a media rights deal with ESPN. So yeah,
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
only choice they would have is the Big 10.
Big
So
Ten's the only one that doesn't have an ESPN alliance anymore.
yeah. But again, if that was to happen, I do agree. I think Notre Dame looks at it like, okay, well, we want to play for sure Florida State, we want to play USC, we want to play Stanford. Um, Honestly, I don't see why they got rid of playing the Michigan schools. I feel like those would both be pretty good tests for them, especially now. Michigan State is going to be kind of up and down because we don't know what they're going to be with John Smith coming over from Oregon State. And we don't know what Michigan's going to look like now that pretty much everybody's going to get drafted. Jim Harbaugh's gone. Finally, we
Yeah,
don't have to worry about, is Jim Harbaugh going to go back to the NFL? Yes,
yeah,
yes, he
yeah.
is. He's gone.
He is. We know this. Well, and Oh, I had my train of thought totally lost because you threw Jim Harbaugh out there.
Hate it when that happens. Dang it, Jim. I'm a
No,
doctor, not a duck hunter.
what were we talking about slightly just before that was
Notre Dame, who they would want to face on a
oh
like
yeah.
constant rotational opponents.
I saw somewhere saying, well, yes, it makes the most sense that geographically that Notre Dame would fit in at the Big Ten, but geography went completely out the window when the Big Ten added, USC, UCLA, and all the Western teams, West
Mm-hmm.
Coast teams. Let's think about who we're talking about, though. Notre Dame is the one that thinks about tradition the most.
Most, yes.
So they're going to want to keep that rivalry against USC. They're going to want to go back. Honestly, I don't. I think that the Big Ten just made Notre Dame mad. Was why they decided, you know what, we're going to go join the ACC adjacent football
Mm-hmm.
wise. We played them instead of the Big Ten. So Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, and all these Big Ten teams that they would play 3 to 4 a year against miss out. Well, I don't think that made them happy. They liked those because a lot of times they were winning 3 of the 4 of those every year almost,
Yeah.
or occasionally losing 2 of the 4. But most of the time they were coming out of those 4 games 3-1, and the Big
Mm-hmm.
Ten did carry some clout. So if you can get a win against a Michigan team that is good,
Mm-hmm.
well, if we can get a win against them, hey, that puts a feather in our cap. I think they missed that. I think
Yeah.
they like the historical. We have that traditional rival. We want to be able to play Michigan and have that built in. Why not have it built into your schedule? Then you don't have to worry about trying to schedule it yourself. When
Yeah.
when you know those things matter and you know that you need to play USC. Well, USC is not going to always take Notre Dame as their also ran of a schedule when
Mm-hmm.
they only get the schedule 2 to 3 games tops.
Yeah. That aren't already in conference and whatnot. And I mean,
Correct.
plus you look at the last couple of years when Notre Dame has faced Ohio State, especially last year. Look how close that game was. They came so close to at least sending the game to overtime, and actually no, they came close to winning and beating Ohio
Right.
State. Had Ohio State not scored that touchdown at the very end. So I mean, yeah, if I'm Notre Dame again, you showed you could at least hang with one of the top 5 teams pretty much the entire year of the country. You showed you could hang with them.
Right.
And
Right.
again, like we've talked about, have your 3 or 4 that you for sure want to face no matter what every year. You want to face USC, you want to face Stanford, you want to face um uh blonde moment. You want to face Florida State, you want to face them by all means go for it. And then everybody else, face Michigan State, face Purdue because
Mhm.
again, like you said, you're probably going to walk out of that, 3-1, 2-2 at the absolute worst. You're in a conference. This is what I think is going to happen, and it's probably not to this severity, but I think what's going to happen is real similar to like what happened with COVID. They're going to eventually be left out. They're honestly what's going to happen. They're going to be the 13th team, and they're going to be so upset that they're not in. And the argument is going to be, well, go into conference, play at least for the conference championship,
Mhm.
and you can get ranked higher. Have fun.
Well, I honestly think if they finish number 4 in the top 4 and don't end up with a bye, that will be enough to push them over the edge. I don't even know it's them missing the playoff. I think they're going to accidentally if they have only 2 losses in a season, they're
Mhm.
going to accidentally be in the top 12. Like
Yeah.
that's what happens with Notre Dame. Doesn't matter what their schedule is, they could be playing Texas A&T agricultural school for the blind,
Blind.
and they every week, and if they go 10-2 or 11-2, they're gonna be in the top 12. So they're gonna. I mean, it's a matter though of, oh my goodness, they've beaten these teams, but they've lost a couple. But they're the best 4. They're number 3 in the country, but they're
Yeah.
the 5 seed.
Yep.
That's gonna not rub them right way, and they're gonna want to get their just seed.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see. Like we've talked about it again. We think it's going to happen. Everything chronologically, everything as far as the breadcrumb trail and whatnot with the NBC deal, with
Right.
NBC moving in on their territory. I think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of win.
Yep, and I think the if the Big Ten really wants them, they can be creative with how they incentivize it with Notre Dame to get them to because honestly, it doesn't matter that they haven't won a national championship since the
The 80s.
the late '80s. They're still very influential, and schools will follow them.
Yeah.
So like if Notre Dame can, if the Big Ten could convince them to go, you're going to convince a Florida State that hey, maybe it is worth it since we're losing another one of our main competitors
Mhm.
that we play every few years. They're going to the Big Ten. We're never going to play those guys again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one of the biggest brands still left in college football that doesn't have
Sure.
a conference allegiance. And I mean, what has basically been the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the SEC really done with the Pac-12 splitting up? It's okay, who are the next biggest brands that we can bring in to make our conference look the best and be the best? The SEC got two of the biggest with Texas and Oklahoma coming in there. Those are massive brands to add to what they've already had. You look at the Big 12, they brought in Colorado, who their brand has come back mainly just because of Deion Sanders.
Sure.
Utah's been outstanding in the Pac-12 the last few years, and then of course you bring the two Arizona schools in on top of it. So real quick before we move on to our last topic, though, because I wanted to mention this. I don't know if you and Dalton heard about this. You probably have, but we have our first ever woman commissioner in charge of what is technically a Power 5 conference, albeit not as much anymore because they only have 2 members. But Teresa Gould was named the Pac-12 or Pac-2 now, as it stands currently, formerly known as the artist formerly known as the Pac-12, was named their commissioner. So she is technically the first ever woman commissioner in charge of a Power 5 conference, with George Kalaikov being removed from the role and will actually be he will keep the role until March 1st. And as of March 1st, Teresa will succeed him in being the commissioner of the artist formerly known as the Pac-12, currently known as the Pac-2. So shout out to Teresa for being that. So it's just unfortunate she inherits a mess.
My question is how does she manage both teams? I mean, that's tough.
Right,
I don't understand how you do that.
Well, I mean, here's what I would do.
I guess there's an alliance still.
There is. So they do have they have a football scheduling partnership and an affiliate membership agreement with the Mountain West Conference, that basically Washington State and Oregon State are going to comprise a lot of their schedule of facing Mountain West teams. I'm still a big proponent
Kind of like
of
Notre Dame and the ACC.
kind of, yeah. I'm still a big proponent of you have Oregon State versus Washington State, best out of 11, so that way you can't have any 5-5 mismatch happens.
Agreed.
And you obviously Washington State will still face Washington for the Apple Cup. If you're able to beat Washington, you move ahead a little bit. If Oregon State can win against Oregon in the Civil War, they move ahead a little bit. But best out of 11, whoever wins gets to win the Pac-2 and gets to move
best
on.
out of 11.
Best out of 11.
Can you make it 9 and give them 3 out of conference games?
I guess we could make it 9, but I don't know.
I put the service academies in there and have a game against them.
There we go. Then they're getting into the AAC territory, since
that's right.
Since both Army and Navy are in the AAC now. Air Force is the only one that's in the Mountain West.
If they get to schedule some games, then you've got the Pac-2 contributing to the AAC.
There we go. I know they had proposed that before, and that got shut down for whatever reason. But hey, this is what it is.
Best out of 11.
No. The potentially doing like a merger with the AAC. I think they were trying to do like the super conference. Gotcha. It was the AAC, the Pac-2, and the Mountain West, all under the Pac-2 umbrella. essentially. It's like let's just take every group of five school. That's just the Pac-12 now. It's just everybody
Yeah,
else.
about right. It's about right.
I even when I was thinking about the Notre Dame thing a few days ago, I was like, you know what Notre Dame ought to do, just to be like, you know what? No, we are going to join a conference. We're going to make the independents a conference. Anybody who leaves their conference gets to join the independents, and then that's going to be our conference, and we're going to be conference champions that way. So yeah, I could see Notre Dame doing that, just to again avoid trying to join an actual conference for giggles and whatnot. But
Yeah.
But let's move on to our last topic of the night, and that is college basketball is in
It's a
full
loaded
swing.
topic right there, Tony.
Oh, it's a very loaded topic. We could probably talk about this for a hot minute, or at least you could. I haven't been able to watch a lot of college basketball, unfortunately, this
Absolutely.
year. But it has been an interesting week, to say the least. The second to last week in February, with so many different upset scores. But again, that's what we love about college basketball, of the fact that there's always at least one or two upsets, but there just happen to be multiple this week. Starting on Sunday, unfortunately, your Purdue Boilermakers got upset by Ohio State, losing by 4. The next biggest one happened on Tuesday with this messed up. Get back here. Here we go. With Creighton beating UConn, not only beating UConn, but
we're not just going Big Ten. My fault.
Yeah, only a couple out of the Big Ten.
Right.
Creighton beating UConn, and beating UConn pretty handedly, especially with UConn being ranked the number 1 team in the country as it currently stands right now. BYU upsetting number 11 Baylor that night as well. On Wednesday, you had George Mason upsetting number 16 Dayton, which not really surprising. My LSU Tigers upset Kentucky on a last second shot. And then tonight, though, tonight, no upsets. Purdue beat Rutgers pretty wholeheartedly. Luckily, it was in Purdue. It was in West Lafayette. So not as much of a worry. If you had to go to Piscataway, a little bit of a different story.
I tell you what, the Purdue did something this year that I didn't think that was humanly possible. They won at Rutgers and at Maryland. So while Maryland's having a down year, they did win both of their games on the road at Maryland and at Rutgers. I'm baffled by that.
Oh, and I did forget to yesterday, also in the Big Ten, Penn State upset number 12 Illinois. So
let's also not forget the Nebraska win over IU.
Yes. Also big.
It was a big win, and it marked the first road win for Nebraska in the Big Ten. So therefore, they finally got off the Overschneid. They'd had one other true road game win, and that was at Kansas State. So they hadn't won on the road in the Big Ten all year until their 15-point win at Assembly Hall.
Right. So we'll dive in a little bit into it. So for anybody who doesn't know, Sam is a massive Purdue fan. He's a big fan of the Golden P being on his head for whatever reason. But Sam, I know you're not necessarily worried because they lost to Ohio State. They obviously rebounded really well against Rutgers, and they only lost by 4 to Ohio State. So it's not like they got demolished or destroyed or anything like that. Purdue is essentially on the same trajectory that they were on last year. They won, I think, 29 games last year. They ended up having 6 losses, including the first round exit that they had. So for you so far, do you feel that this is about the same as you were last year as far as confidence? Do you feel like the team is maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit they've learned a lot more since that exit last year?
I think this season, and call me whatever you want. I really, honestly, it doesn't faze me. I think this year is a different year, and Dalton and I have even talked about it, and I've written a couple articles about it, that this is a different season when it comes to Purdue basketball, and And it's not even that oh yeah, they've been in the top 5 every week this season. It's not that. It's a culmination of multiple things. They've had 21, I believe, straight weeks in the top 5, which also means every week this year has been they look at who they've beaten. Yeah, granted, Gonzaga is one of the lowest teams or last teams in many people's prognostications, but they beat Nebraska or Gonzaga when they were number 11 in the country. Then they went and proceeded to beat Tennessee. Then they beat Marquette, all within the same span of 3 days. Like they beat those 3 teams all in the top 10, including themselves. They won the most loaded Maui Classic ever. And they did it in an undefeated fashion. They beat number 1 Arizona. I mean, they've won, what was it, 35 straight non-conference basketball games in the regular season. That it just there's something. Lance Jones, if they had Lance Jones last year, they don't lose to FDU. They probably make it out of the first weekend relatively easily, and make it to Madison Square Garden, where they maybe even go there. Lance Jones adds a facet to Purdue's game that doesn't require him to score to be extremely effective. And it's not him just being a defensive wizard. He can run the show if he needs to. He can run as the point. He can be the shooting guard if Purdue needs him. Braden Smith, his improvement is markedly better. Leaps and bounds from what he was last year, and he was pretty darn good last year. He had his shortcomings, but he's on the Naismith short list, the watch list at this point. So we're sitting at what, 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks more of the season, and Purdue has 2 of the 20 on the watch list. Now, granted, I don't know that there's many people, which just this baffles me, is Zach Edey is playing at a better clip this year than he was last year. It's very, I would be worried, honestly. There have been 3 teams that have been able to combat him. And, I will go to the ends of the earth right now to talk about the fact that I think he gets fouled 3 to 4 times that aren't called every trip down the floor. He doesn't complain a bit. And if you do, it's kind of a malicious, like, okay, maybe he did. You really get the dude's 7'4". As hard as he gets hit, those would move people like you and me all over the place. And we'd have bruises forever and days. So the fact that what he's got to adjust to in order to be as dominant as he is blows my mind. And I think this is a different season for Purdue.
Yeah. And much to your point, so between Zach Edey and Braden Smith, both, they lead Purdue in basically all of the categories that you can lead them in. Zach Edey with points with 23.2 per game, rebounds with literally just under 12. Braden Smith leads with assists just over 7, just under 2 in steals, and then Zach Edey leads with just over 2 in blocks. So, I mean, both are really solid. And again, I think this is another one of those. I think a lot of people forget that the Purdue team last year, and honestly, the last couple of years, they have been really young. They've been a lot of, younger classmen. They've been freshmen. They've been sophomores, and they've been through it. So they're going to learn and they're going to get better. I mean, Zach Edey this year is going to be a senior. You look at Braden Smith, he's a sophomore. Like, they're learning as they go, and they have, and not that they really don't have a choice to get better, but they're naturally going to get better as the seasons go on and as it progresses. So, I mean, they can't help but, I would think, to be better as the season goes on. Now, I will say for Purdue, they are pretty lucky to at least end the Big Ten season, because more than likely they're going to win the championship. The only next closest one is Illinois.
They're 2.5 games up on Illinois, and they play them. They play them next
one
week,
more time. 2 weeks, March
2
5th.
weeks. Okay.
Yeah. So they go to Michigan, which we can talk about them a little bit, because Michigan, unfortunately, has been a dumpster fire in basketball this year, going, I think
Very
it was what,
least.
8-18 so far overall.
Yeah, they're 3-12 in the Big Ten, I think, right now.
Yeah. And I wanted your thoughts because I actually work with a guy who's a big Michigan fan. He actually wants Juwan Howard fired. But I've heard a couple different types of rumors. I've heard rumors that they want to move on from Juwan. It's one of those they want to let him finish out the season and then they're going to say, "Hey, we love you, but we're going to part ways." I've heard other rumors that because he had the heart procedure in the offseason, that they're going to give him one more year to try and right the ship. And I know we've talked about this, that we actually thought he was going to get fired long before then because he was going to get in a fight with somebody. Maybe the heart procedure, he's like, I gotta take it easy. I can't be getting in fights as much anymore. But I don't see what giving him one more year really does. Like when he had a top player like Hunter Dickinson, when he had his sons on Michigan, they
Lost
didn't
him.
do anything.
And he lost Hunter Dickinson to another college team. It's not like
Yep.
Dickinson left and went to the NBA. He left to go to a different college.
Different
Like,
school.
you're an All-American
Hmm.
at the University of Michigan, and you decide, I need to transfer. I'm not going to the NBA. I'm transferring to a different school. And it,
Because I feel
it
I have a better chance at winning a national title with this
yeah,
school than I do with Michigan.
yeah, and I honestly, I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know that another year makes a difference. It would be one thing if they were showing glimmers of hope. Their marquee win was beating a Wisconsin team who ended up losing like 5 in a row at
Yeah,
one point because they just hit a really bad streak, and Michigan happened to be one of those 5 that they
yeah.
lost in a row.
Mhm,
So I'm not saying that that isn't a good win, but at the same time, they hit Wisconsin when they were playing pretty poorly, so it doesn't surprise you as much,
mhm,
anyways, that Michigan won. They just don't have. They're losing to teams they shouldn't
mhm.
lose to. They're not beating team. They're not upsetting anybody very very rarely, other than short of that Wisconsin game that we just mentioned, or I just mentioned. It just
Yeah,
they don't look like they've got much going in the realm of upside,
yeah.
and so I don't know that extra year, if they so chose to do, and giving Juwan Howard an extra year, I don't know that matters. I really don't.
And honestly, you look at a lot of the games that they have played this year, yeah, they beat. So to give you an idea, so out of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Out of the last 15 games, they've won 2. They beat Wisconsin in a bad
Mm.
streak, and they beat Ohio State. Other than
Who's
that,
Ohio
they've
State?
huh?
Who's Ohio State? They just fired their coach.
Right. And magically got a win, surprisingly enough, after
Yeah,
after they did that. But yeah, they really haven't beat anybody of competition. And not only are they losing, they're losing badly to
yeah.
everybody. And it's not one of those that's like, oh, you're losing on a last second shot. Oh, you lost by like 4 or 5 points. No, no, no. You're getting like blown out. You are losing. And
Which
losing, like you
doesn't
said,
bode well for saying that to then they beat Purdue.
right? Right. So yeah, I don't see him, and so apparently the Michigan athletic director supports Howard, even though it's as bad as it currently is. I don't see why, but that's not my program to run. But if it was me, I'd be
And
like,
what the
nah,
crazy
man.
thing is, Tony, is the way the Big Ten's been playing. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan beats, let's say, Purdue, or they beat Illinois, or they come up with that big win that just now that we've put it into the stratosphere that they haven't beaten anybody, now they're going
Right?
to win 2 or 3, or whatever. But like, it just, this season doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Michigan, you've got Michigan State struggling right around 500, and they were expected to be a top 10 team in the country, not
Yep.
top 10 in the Big Ten, top 10 in the country.
Yeah.
And still as late as last week and a half ago, we were still questioning whether or not they could get back into the top 2 or 3
Yeah.
in the conference. Honestly, they can still get in the top 3. That's the kicker about
Hmm.
this whole thing is Wisconsin sitting at number 3 at 10-6.
Yeah.
Michigan State is 8-7. So
Hmm.
like they're not out of the realm of being a top 3 Big 10 team, but yet they haven't done a ton to show that they're really, ready to compete night in and
Yeah.
night out and show what they were supposed to be this year.
Yeah, and like you said, I think you put it in the best way. Of they're so much like Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know which Michigan State team you're going to get. Are you going to
Yeah.
get the one that handed number 6 Baylor at the time just with no problem,
Ratchet.
like they'd been doing this all the time, like it's nothing, or are you going to get the
Mhm.
one that they lost to Minnesota? You're able to beat number 10 Illinois, you beat Penn State, you sweep Michigan, but then you turn around, you lose to Iowa. And for whatever reason, Iowa
At home,
basketball,
you lost to
yeah.
Iowa at home,
And I don't know if you know this, Iowa has beaten them the last 5 out of 6 times they've faced, both at home and
including
away.
the 12-point debacle that Michigan State gave up, the 12-point lead that they gave up in what, 2 minutes or whatever?
Yeah,
Was that 2
yeah,
years ago?
I think so, if I remember right. So yeah, it's nuts. But to kind of finish Purdue's schedule though, so they go to Michigan, then they host Michigan State, then they go to
Mhm.
number 12 Illinois, and then they host Wisconsin to finish out the regular season at least. So
Let's say it this way. I don't foresee Purdue losing enough to not win the Big Ten.
mhm,
But honestly, with the way the schedule goes or way the season could go, it wouldn't surprise me either. I,
yeah,
I don't expect them to lose 2 games out of the remaining games they've got, but I could see them tying for first.
right,
Wisconsin has done it before. Why couldn't they do it again? To where banking in a 3 to beat Purdue to take the 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 championship away. Whatever.
right. Um, so my next question for you, because like I said, you've been able to watch a little bit more than I have, and Jay
Mhm.
asked this question kind of earlier on in the show.
Yeah.
Who is your flying under the radar team that you think will be dangerous come time for the tournament? Who do you think is going to be
Well,
the team?
I'm gonna give a couple of different ones. My first one is gonna be a Big Ten one. I had one that Dalton and I had talked about with the Big Ten. I thought Northwestern could do something really, but they lost Ty Berry
Yeah.
to the torn meniscus. He's out for the rest of the season. So I'm holding judgment because he was kind of the Robin to Boo Booey's Batman, and
Yeah.
as Dalton said. And if they can't find somebody to take Ty Berry's spot, which I don't know that man exists on that roster,
Hmm.
Northwestern's not going to be the one that I expect. But from the Big Ten, I honestly Nebraska could do something. Let's say I think they could get to the second weekend,
Hmm.
and not a lot of people expect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've beaten Purdue when Purdue was number 1. They went into Assembly Hall, which is never easy to win, and they handled IU. So I mean,
Yeah.
they've got the
Yep.
capabilities of winning games, and honestly, they get the right draw. They could win a couple of games going into get into that second weekend, and you know what? That's where they would be a Cinderella by that point. They're not going to be higher than a 10 seed, maybe a 9. But if they get into the second weekend, that means they beat a 1 seed. So like
Yeah.
there's some potential that they could beat some good teams because they have.
Yeah. And I know I'm kind of excited because I know we actually talked about this, what was it, a year ago, maybe even almost 2 years ago, of I'm going to probably butcher his name, unfortunately. Was it Kaizai Tominaga? Of
Keisei Tominaga.
Keisei Tominaga, okay.
Yeah,
Of his emergence, because I mean, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about him when
last
he
year.
was a sophomore last year or a junior last year. He was playing great. He was one of the few bright spots on Nebraska's roster.
Well,
and how
we
well
talked
he was
about
able
it
to help them.
last year. We talked
Yeah,
about it last year. He during the month of February, he
yeah,
averaged nationally. He averaged more points than Zach Edey did, and
yeah.
Zach Edey was second on the list. So it wasn't like Zach Edey had a bad month.
No.
Nationally, he averaged the second most points behind Keisei Tominaga. So Keisei can put up points, and he can put them up in a hurry,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to be threes. That's the kicker is he can shoot the lights out for days from threes, but they don't have to come from threes either.
Yeah, yeah. So those are your two out of the Big Ten. You think Northwestern and
Yeah.
Nebraska?
Well,
Is there anybody?
I'm holding off on Northwestern just because of that injury.
Right.
If they had Tiberi, I would say they were my pick out of the Big Ten. But if it's not Northwestern, I think Nebraska could be a team out of the Big Ten to make a little bit of noise. Um,
Okay.
Overall, I really like Dayton and I really like Indiana State. They're both
Okay.
two teams that are so off the radar, and I'm not even saying they're gonna win. They're not what is it, Obi Toppin, the
Oh
Dayton
yeah.
Flyers of Obi Toppin, to
Mm-hmm.
where COVID, took their chance at a national title away.
Right.
But Dayton's pretty good, even though we just talked that they got knocked off this last weekend. Upsets happen. That's why the last undefeated men's basketball team was 1976. It's
Yeah.
hard to go undefeated. Ask Kentucky, who made it to the national or the Final Four and ended up getting
Mm-hmm.
beat by Wisconsin a few years back, and St. Joe's, who gets to the Elite Eight undefeated, number one in the country, and loses in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four. It's really hard to go undefeated. So upsets happen. So I really think I think Dayton could do some damage. They're right now. I think they're projected at a 4 seed. I think
Mm-hmm.
is where I remember seeing them the last. And Indiana State, if not for the fact of going very far in the tournament, I think they could win. They could be an 8 or 9 seed that upsets the first 1 seed. Minus or taking out of the consideration that a 16 beats a 1. You just don't take that into consideration most of the time. But
Yeah.
maybe Indiana State gets that 9 seed or an 8 seed and beats the first 1 seed out of the tournament. They're definitely capable of doing that. They can shoot the ball really well. But I hope, in my heart of hopes, that Purdue Fort Wayne makes the tournament
Okay. Um.
because
Say I
because it would be the first time the Mastodons made the tournament.
Right. So I just looked according to ESPN's 68 team bracketology that was updated on February 20th. So it's been a couple days. They
Yeah.
currently have Dayton as a 5 seed in the South
Okay.
Division, and they would play McNeese State in the first
Ooh.
round as of right now.
A McNeese
So
State that IU struggled against and barely beat them by 1. Oh wait, was that more? No, it was McNeese State, not Moorhead.
was it?
I'm pretty sure it was McNeese State that they only beat by 1 point after
I can
giving Kansas a run for their money.
Let's see here. I can tell you here in a
It might
second.
have been
Is more
Moorhead, but I'm pretty sure it
it
was McNeese.
it was Morehead State.
No, here I am
Yeah, I know.
acting
I know.
all knowledgeable, and then I screw it up.
So close. Hey, you're better than me. I
Started
haven't been able to watch this year.
started with an M.
Right? It was one of those two. It was something
Yeah,
with an M and it ended with state. We don't know which one,
that's
but
right.
it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
It did.
But
Uh
yeah, I think Indiana State could win a game or two. Now, honestly, watch now they don't even make the tournament or something, or whatever. But they're the prototypical mid major, where they've got a lot of experience, the age, the
mhm,
older teams that stick around long enough and they gel and they all of a sudden make some noise in the tournament. They beat a team that's got 3 freshmen or whatever, super freshmen or whatever.
mhm,
The whole Mercer beating Duke in the first round. Those types of games do happen, and I think
mhm.
Indiana State is set up perfectly to win maybe a game or two from them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, buddy, it has been fun as always. I appreciate you coming on, good
And
sir. It
always,
was It was a blast. Hopefully we can get you on for more episodes in the future, talk a little bit more college ball.
Always up for it.
And this is also fun because for those of you who don't know, and maybe you don't watch Big Talk, typically I'm the one who gives where to find everybody on social media. But Sam, this time you get to tell people where they can find you on social media for all the rest of their college sports if they want to find out more on your opinions on college football and college basketball.
All right. Well, Tony, we're Big Talk. It's B1 on the TikToks, the Instagrams, and the platform formerly known as Twitter. It is at B1G_talk. That's B1G, not BIG, Tony. B1G_talk. Big Talk. Look Big Talk up on Facebook. Do not click on all Big Talk. That's not
same,
us.
same. Not same,
That's not
same.
us.
Totally different.
We're
not same, same.
We're Big Talk, not all Big Talk. So
Exactly.
Big Talk. But then every week we're streamed on the ASAP network every week on Friday mornings. And then later that day, the audio podcast is released through Lounge Media Group later that day.
Awesome. Well, and of course, if you want to find more episodes of this and connect with Sam as well, you can always find him on Inside the Hoosier Mind here on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Actually, no, not on Twitter. On Twitter, it's different because apparently somebody already took my username handle. Shenanigans.
That's what you get.
Shenanigans. But it'll be at IN Hoosier Mind. But again, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. On Spotify, it will actually be up on Spotify here just in a short bit. But again, Sam, I appreciate you coming on, good sir, talking some college ball. It has been a hot while. You were always welcome on, and hopefully have you on again soon, buddy.
All right. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night, and we will see y'all later.